I am especially excited about recording this episode for you today. This is a very special episode. In addition of what I had promised you last week, if you are a longtime listener and you listened to our episodes last week, I announced that going into the weekend, I would promise you an episode that you can take to your personal time so that you can enjoy and love that time just a little bit more for yourself and with your kids. And today's especially special because I actually got permission to share an excerpt from another podcast. It was an interview with Dr. Tasha Eurich. She was interviewed by Jordan Harbinger on one of the world's most popular podcasts, The Jordan Harbinger Show. And he was kind enough to give me permission to share this excerpt about what she talks about as the holy grail of parenting. Does that sound enticing or what? I can't wait to dive in with you. Hello, this is Melissa Dillon, and I am your host today on Have More Time. We're a show that's all about giving you insights and tips and tricks and ideas and expert advice that you can apply to your own life to really have more time for the things that you love to do, that you enjoy, with the people that you love to enjoy them with, like your kids and your spouse, your loved ones, whomever you're looking forward to enjoying in the upcoming weekend. Let's go ahead and dive in, shall we? So I'm so very thrilled to be with you today. If this is your first time listening to the Have More Time podcast, welcome. I truly hope that this is a treat for you. And I'm hoping that I can give you some ideas and insights that stem from Dr. Eurich's advice that may help you enjoy your time this weekend just a little bit more with your kiddos. So I am so excited. But before I share the excerpt from the episode that was aired on the Jordan Harbinger Show a couple weeks back, I have to go into a little bit of a bio on each of them so that you really understand who you're hearing from here, because it's very exciting. So Dr. Tasha Eurich is an organizational psychologist, researcher, and New York Times best-selling author. Over her 15-plus year career, she's helped thousands of leaders become more self-aware and successful. She contributes to Harvard Business Review and has been featured in outlets like The Wall Street Journal, The New York Times, The Guardian, NPR, Forbes, and Fast Company, as well as peer-reviewed journals. In her latest book, Insight, she delves into the connection between self-awareness and success, where she shares the surprising findings from her multi-year research program on the topic. And though this book has been praised as a #1 must-read for career and leadership development by a number of sources, her body of work, at least in my personal opinion anyway, can most certainly be one for us parents to consider as a must-read. I thoroughly enjoyed a recent podcast interview between Dr. Eurich and Jordan Harbinger. Jordan and his wife, Jennifer, recently had their first child, which prompted Jordan to ask great questions that prompted insights from Dr. Eurich that I promise you'll be so relieved to hear. Jordan and Jen were extremely kind in their willingness to allow me to share the actual audio from the interview with you that I can't wait to share. But before we dive in, I think it'd also be helpful to hear about who Jordan is. So Jordan Harbinger, often referred to as the Larry King of podcasting, is a Wall Street lawyer turned interview talk show host and a communications and social dynamics expert. Jordan has hosted a top 50 iTunes podcast for over 12 years and receives over 6 million downloads per month, making the Jordan Harbinger Show one of the most popular podcasts in the world. The show was awarded Apple's Best of 2018 and is one of the most downloaded shows of the year. On the Jordan Harbinger Show, Jordan deconstructs the playbooks of the most successful people on earth and shares their strategies, perspectives, and practical insights with the rest of us. Now, if that sounds really appealing to you, I'll definitely make sure that I put not only a link of the full episode that is the full interview with Dr. Tasha Eurich, but I'll also link to the show so that you can subscribe over there too. I have listened to a number of shows for years now on the Jordan Harbinger Show, and he was on another show previously too. So he's got a lot of experience interviewing lots of really neat people. So if you're into stuff like that, and even though it may not be something that's parenting related, there are plenty of little nuggets that are life related and can really help you for what our mission is here is to help you level up to a life that you enjoy more. And you can definitely learn some little nuggets of knowledge over there too. So I encourage you to go check it out. So without further ado, here's the little clip between Dr. Tasha Eurich and Jordan Harbinger.
What about our kids? How do we get our kids? I mean, I have a 3-month-old, so he's either completely self-absorbed or not self-absorbed at all. I'm still deciding. But how do we get them when they're older to think more of others and be more informer than me-former? Are there things that parents do wrong that we can stop doing? That might be a good place to start.
Let me give you one thing that is really powerful. So there was a study where the researchers asked a bunch of parents of young children to answer, is your child more special than the other children? And then 6 months later, they went and they actually measured how self-absorbed the children were behaving from kind of an objective standpoint. They asked them questions like, do you deserve more than other kids deserve? And what they found was the parents that said their child was special tended to have children who behaved in a more self-absorbed, narcissistic manner. But what they found was when the parents, instead of emphasizing the specialness of their child, emphasized the love that they have towards that child and showed them warmth. So instead of saying, you are the smartest kid in the class, you would say, I love you and I believe in you. And that small change of sort of warmth versus specialness, those kids tended to have not just less self-absorbed behaviors, but they were more self-accepting. So that's the holy grail, right? Is being self-accepting without having an overly optimistic view of your contributions. So I think if parents can make that one change, what the research shows is it has a pretty powerful impact.
So we just reinforce their self-esteem, but don't do that necessarily to the detriment of other people? That sounds so obvious, and yet I'm totally not sure how to do that.
It's the cult to self. It has a hold of us in our parenting just as much as it does in our social media use. And I think we hold up specialness as the holy grail. We think about reality TV or even the self-esteem movement, which we could probably do a whole nother podcast on, is, as it turns out, self-esteem is actually not that helpful. And many have shown sort of more harmful than it is helpful. And so it just requires us to be aware of those gut instincts that we have, to praise based on, you're the specialist kid versus I love you the most. I mean, it's not terribly hard to do, but I think it starts with that awareness.
Okay, so does that kind of get you excited as much as it did for me? I mean, there's a whole lot of context there. She talked about the cult of self, the me-former versus the informer. I'm not going to get into that here because I'm not an expert in what she's an expert on. But what I will do is link to the full episode so that you can listen to it to get some more context. And then I'll also link to her book so that you can check it out, because I am so excited about this. It really aligns a lot with what we learn in early childhood education. I mean, as an early childhood educator, we work very, very hard to lift children up, to give them a sense of peace and love and safety in our classroom. Yet it can get very tricky because all of us, and I'm talking all of us adults, everyone who's an adult right now was raised so differently. And it is not our faults. It's not our parents' faults either. Experts from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, they were still diving into this stuff and didn't know as much as we know today. So, keeping that in mind and recognizing the great job, buddy, or the tough love method that a lot of us were raised with, the spankings, the timeouts, all of these things, because a lot of parents from the 80s or the 70s, 80s, and 90s were raising children just in a very, very different way. And so what we've been trained to do is kind of to follow suit. Have you noticed in your own parenting where you just get frustrated, flustered, or feel like, there's got to be another way to do this in the ways that you're trying to discipline your child and the environment that you're creating for your child? You're reading a lot about positive parenting, conscious parenting, being mindful, mindfulness, and all of these things. But if we didn't grow up in it, it's really, really hard. And she actually mentions in the interview that 85% of us are not self-aware. I invite you also to consider that maybe a lot of the percentage of time, maybe you are aware. Maybe you are self-aware and you're working on it, because if you're listening to this podcast, I mean, we're all in this together to really bring awareness in our parenting and learn new ways of raising our children in a place that we love, in a life that we enjoy together, right? But we're all little babies in learning how to be self-aware and how to teach our children how to be self-aware. So that's okay if you don't make the right move right away. But what I invite you to do this weekend is maybe be observant of the ways that you're praising your child. Be observant of the environment that you have on the day-to-day, and some ways that you can show your child that love that she's talking about. Some ways that I do it in my classroom that really sparks a sense of community right away, sparks a sense of safety and nurturing in the classroom environment, like I was talking about a little earlier, is to make eye contact a lot. So you may not realize it, but there are probably plenty of times, and I'm not saying this, to make you feel less than in your parenting, because I'm speaking from personal experience here, where maybe your son or daughter is talking to you and you're not necessarily making eye contact with them. Maybe you're engaged in something else, because little ones, they don't understand the concept of patience at the same level that we do. They're just learning it, especially if they're really little in preschool. They're just getting to understand boundaries and respecting others and waiting patiently. So they'll just start talking, and you might be in the middle of cooking or answering an email, or you're in your own adult world and your own thing, and then you're like, okay, wait, I have to disengage to give you attention. But sometimes we forget to disengage. Do you know what I'm talking about? I know I've been there. So just taking a moment to pause, stop what you're doing, or, let them know, sweetheart, I would love to hear what you're sharing with me right now. I do want to hear it. Just give me 1 minute, and then I will give you that undivided attention. Let me just finish up what I'm doing here. If your child struggles with this, gosh, I feel like I should put this in a part 2. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll put this in a second part so that you guys can really spend time with this episode. But anyway, I'm rambling. We don't edit podcast episodes around here. So so one thing that I've done with my son is teach him the concept of time by setting a timer. So, sweetie, I'm going to be done with this in 2 minutes. As soon as that timer goes off, I can tend to what you're needing help with over there, or I can play with you. Just let me finish this up. So that way he understands, he starts to learn, and your child can learn too, respecting boundaries and understanding patience and giving you that space to switch gears to give them that attention that they're looking for. So making that eye contact, communicating expectations, and then also, stemming from expectations, letting go of expectations, because your child may have different ideas about how they want to spend time with you, and I've talked about that in early episodes. And I encourage you to go back and listen to some of those, because that'll help you guys all get on the same page. Another thing that you can do to really show love is to use the words, I love you. I know that there are so many times, especially depending on the type of home you were raised in, maybe I love you wasn't something that was said all the time. But I can tell you, since hearing this episode, I've taken out the words, I'm proud of you, out of my vernacular with my son. He's 4. His name is Bodhi. And so I have only said it just out of habit. I've said it to him maybe 2 or 3 times. I'm proud of you. But I'm replacing that with, I love you. And I see you. I see that you made this beautiful picture. Tell me more about it. I see that you created this beautiful structure. Tell me more about it. And just in the last couple of weeks of my implementing this, I am so thrilled to share with you that I have noticed a big change in our dynamic. And it's not only a change in how he perceives me, but it's also a change in the way that I am treating him and interacting with him. It's just this tiny little shift of not focusing so much on the teachings and him learning something, or my focusing on lifting his self-esteem and telling him I'm proud, but instead focusing on showing him that I love him, has really been a game changer. And I would love to hear about how you're taking in this information and how you choose to implement it and try it out this weekend. Now, if some things don't work out for you and you're finding that you're struggling a little bit, please let me know. The community is going to be open very soon and you will get notified. Just go over to raisingkindness.org so that you can become a founding fan, and I can let you know as soon as the community opens up, and then we can have some more dialogue about this. I do plan on finishing up the book Insight. I cannot wait to share some more information about it. I've mentioned Dr. Eurich a couple weeks ago. I will be mentioning her again. I really admire her work, as well as the work of other doctors in the same field. There are so many doctors out there doing a lot of really hard work for you and your family and your kids. And I am so appreciative that you've chosen to take some time out of your busy day today to listen to this episode. I really hope that it was worthwhile. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate your time. And please let me know if you feel like I've missed anything, because of course, I always want to cover as much as I can. And I will be covering the topic of loving your child on a deeper level in lots more episodes after this. Take this as a debut intro episode to season 3. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. And please do go over to the Jordan Harbinger Show. Check it out. And if you like that one, subscribe to that one too. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And I look forward to talking with you next time.